Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 7 Part 11 based on novel. So let's start. Numerous tiny seals swiftly spread out from the spot where Jiang Hao stood. The green stones beneath his feet also began to wither one after another at a shocking rate. It was as if they had been worn down by the passage of time. Desolate force. It was the unique energy of the Desolate Hall and also the mark of a Desolate Hall's disciple. Being one of the 4 senior direct disciples of the Desolate Hall, Jiang Hao had mastered the desolation skill until the 7th level. As such, the ferocity of his martial art was several times stronger than Tong Chuan's. Lin Dong stood on the black metal seal. His eyes were solemn as he stared at Jiang Hao below. He slowly flexed his huge green dragon arms before waves of surging strength swiftly spread across his limbs. Desolate blade. Jiang Hao raised his head and looked directly at Lin Dong with chilly eyes. An icy cold voice was emitted from his mouth. Immediately, the golden light was withdrawn from the large golden saber in his hand, before numerous seal patterns slowly appeared on his blade. However, the fluctuation on his blade was not weakened when that seal pattern appeared. Instead, it caused one's heart to tremble. Desolate blade. One of the martial arts that the disciples of the Desolate Hall must learn. It was activated by desolate force and possessed an extremely shocking lethal strength. Lin Dong had already experienced it when he fought with Tong Chuan. However, from the looks of it, it was obvious that the desolate blade used by Jiang Hao was even more powerful. Swoosh! Jiang Hao suddenly took a step forward when the desolate blade was formed. He slashed his blade downwards and the space in front of him immediately became extremely distorted. A greyish blade glow directly tore through space and engulfed Lin Dong at a frightening speed. As that grey blade glow rapidly magnified in Lin Dong's eyes, the expression in the latter's eyes also suddenly became sharp. However, even as he faced this fearsome attack by Jiang Hao, he did not choose to retreat. Instead, Lin Dong stomped on the metal seal and directly flew out in front of many stunned gazes. Flash! A resplendent green light suddenly erupted on Lin Dong's body as he rushed forward. The green light rose and it vaguely transformed into an enormous dragon figure behind him. Its aura was quite frightening. The huge dragon figure crouched behind Lin Dong and both of its claws were tightly clenched. The dragon scales on both of the green dragon arms were flickering with an icy cool luster. Waves after waves of frightening strength surged under the dragon scales before finally gushing out. The green light, which contained enough power to blast apart a mountain, descended from the sky. Finally, it violently collided against that sharp grey-colored blade glow. Boom! A shocking sound spread out in the sky. Following the ripple, there was a hurricane-like energy fluctuation. Jiang Hao's eyes were slightly cold as he watched the light that scattered across the sky. There was a trace of surprise deep within his eyes. After having used the desolate force, his blade attack was sufficient to easily destroy the defenses of a 6-yuan Nirvana stage expert. However, it was actually blocked by Lin Dong. Swoosh! A surprised expression flashed across Jiang Hao's eyes. Immediately, a hurried rushing wind sound suddenly resounded in the sky. A glowing figure shot out from within that green light with a lightning-like speed. In a flash, it had appeared in the space above Jiang Hao. Light surged from his green dragon arm. Under the flickering icy cold light, another frightening force once again came pouring out. Lin Dong did not use any martial art and his attack was not fancy. However, upon being magnified by his dragon arm, that pure destructive attack covered up any openings. Everything was useless in the face of strength. After Lin Dong's arms transformed into green dragon arms, the strength that it possessed was sufficient to destroy a 6-yuan Nirvana stage expert's Nirvana golden body. Such formidable strength! Jiang Hao also sensed the strength that was contained within Lin Dong's fist. Immediately, his eyes turned cold. Only then did he finally realize that Lin Dong's physical body was actually this formidable. Desolate net. Although Lin Dong's attack was wild and violent, Jiang Hao was clearly not an ordinary individual. His face revealed a cold smile before he suddenly placed his palms together. Instantly, Countless grey threads spun out from the tip of his fingers. It soared with the wind and transformed into an enormous grey net. Immediately, this grey net directly covered Lin Dong. Bam! Lin Dong's fist violently smashed against that enormous net. Surprisingly, he was unable to break it with his punch. Despite using a massive amount of force, it felt as if he had punched into the mud. The feeling of his fist smashing onto cotton caused Lin Dong to frown tightly. Swoosh! While Lin Dong punched that grey net, the latter also instantly twined around him. It actually trapped Lin Dong with a lightning-like speed. This fellow is in deep trouble. It is not easy to escape after being trapped by the desolate net. Subsequently, it is likely that he will become a sitting duck for Jiang Hao's attacks. Pang Tong and the other two raised their brows upon seeing this scene. Since they were highly knowledgeable about Desolate Hall martial arts, they were naturally aware of just how difficult it was to deal with the desolate net, which was made from desolate force. Junior brother Lin Dong, this is the difference between you and me. A smirk appeared on Jiang Hao's face at this moment. Promptly, his eyes turned solemn as grey qi gathered rapidly on his hand. Traces of seals began to spread over his arms. At the same time, there was an extremely frightening fluctuation being emitted. Golden State Special Desolate Palm. Jiang Hao's eyes were cold. He did not hesitate even a little as he flipped his palm and executed an extremely fierce palm attack. Air burst apart under that palm wind, while an ear-piercing buzzing sound was also emitted. Jiang Hao attacked extremely quickly. The palm wind had just sounded out when in the next instant, it was already about to reach Lin Dong, who was being trapped by the desolate net. From the looks of its momentum, even Lin Dong would suffer some injuries if he was struck by it. After struggling briefly within the desolate net, Lin Dong also became aware of how troublesome it was to deal with it. However, there was no panic in his eyes. He stared at the fierce palm attack from Jiang Hao before immediately inhaling a deep breath of air. The fist-sized desolate seed within his dantian began to tremble intensely. Waves after waves of desolate force followed his medians and gushed out. The desolate force surged. After which, everyone saw Lin Dong once again raise his ferocious green dragon arms. However, this time around, the green light on it had strangely disappeared. Traces of patterns began to climb over it. Is that desolate force? Some of those direct disciples, who were closer to the arena, shrunk their eyes immediately. This fluctuation also belonged to the desolate force. It seems like Lin Dong was also able to use desolate force. How is this be possible? Tong Chuan, who was a short distance away, had a stunned expression. He clearly recalled that Lin Dong was not even aware of what the desolate force was 5 days ago. How is it possible that he managed to use desolate force? Could it be that he had actually learnt it in 5 days? Tong Chuan's face involuntarily twitched a little when he thought of this. If one wants to release desolate force until such an extent, one must at the very least form a desolate seed. Could it be that Lin Dong had successfully formed a desolate seed during these 5 days? Lin Dong ignored the uproar that suddenly sounded from the surroundings of the arena. While his arm was gradually covered with cracked lines, his eyes also suddenly turned cold. Finally, he ruthlessly threw a punch. Kai? Lin Dong's fist wind first came into contact with the desolate net that trapped him. However, this time around, the cotton-like feeling did not appear. Under the outpour of his terrifying strength, the desolate net shook before finally breaking apart after only enduring for a short while. Jiang Hao's sharp palm wind arrived at the moment the desolate net collapsed. It violently collided against Lin Dong's grey dragon fist in front of the many gazes present. Boom! A shocking and solidified ripple swept apart. Numerous enormous cracked lines immediately appeared on the surrounding ground, while large rocks danced wildly in the sky. Finally, 2 figures shot backwards in front of the many eyes present. Both of them retreated over a dozen steps before they staggered and stabilized themselves. Neither of them was actually able to gain an upper hand in this simple head-on collision. The atmosphere in the arena was a little quiet. Everyone was silent as they stared at this unusually fearsome clash. Quite a number of people inhaled a breath of cold air when these 2 people were forced back. Even Pang Tong and the others had a slight change in their expression. Clearly, they did not expect that Lin Dong was actually able to fight evenly with Jiang Hao. Although Jiang Hao had yet to use his strongest attack, his Yuan power mastery had exceeded Lin Dong by 2 stages. Seated on their stone chairs, Chen Zhen and Wu Dao had a strange flicker within their eyes when they saw this scene. The 100 Empire War Champion really lives up to his name. Jiang Hao's face was currently filled with a serious expression. Perhaps he may have underestimated Lin Dong at the beginning of the fight. However, right now, Jiang Hao definitely saw the latter as a worthy opponent. Lin Dong curled his lips. He clenched his hand while green light flickered on his arm, as he tried to shake off the numb sensations in his arm. During the previous clash, if it was not for his strong physical body cultivated from the green heaven materialized dragon skill, he would have definitely been injured. If you are able to receive my next attack, I will accept your promotion to senior direct disciple. Jiang Hao's expression was solemn. He took a stride forward and both of his hands slowly formed a somewhat unusual seal. Grayish light erupted from within his body. The bits and pieces of it were just like rising stars. Great Star Majestic Fist. Upon seeing his hand seal, Pang Tong's group and even Chen Zhen and Wu Dao had a sudden change in their expressions. Clearly, they recognized the martial art that Jiang Hao was about to use. One of the 4 great martial arts. Lin Dong inhaled a deep breath of air. He saw the martial arts on the 4 stone tablets and he naturally recognized Jiang Hao's hand seal. Immediately, a grave expression appeared on his face. A moment later, he slowly extended his long finger and gently touched the spot between his eyebrows. A strange grayish glow began to flicker at that spot. Chen Zhen and Wu Dao on the stone seat were initially stunned when they saw his action. Immediately, as if they thought of something, a rich disbelief surged in their eyes. A somewhat dry and hoarse voice was involuntarily emitted from their mouths. Could it be? Lin Dong shut his eyes as he stood in the arena. His expression was quite calm in the face of this unusually fierce attack by Jiang Hao. Moreover, there was no especially powerful ripple appearing around his body. His actions caused quite a number of people to frown. Jiang Hao's attack was not a simple one and even a 7 Yuan Nirvana stage expert would have some difficulties handling it, should he lack any powerful tactics. While everyone was engaged in private conversations, the grey line between Lin Dong's eyebrows became increasingly rich. It expanded and contracted unsteadily, appearing as though there was something that was about to be born from the grey line. Bang bang. In contrast to Lin Dong's strange calmness, the area around Jiang Hao was extremely lively. An extremely shocking Yuan power ripple containing the desolate force continuously spread out from within his body. His aura was truly frightening. Grey light climbed onto Jiang Hao's body before gradually agglomerating. It was as though it had vaguely agglomerated into a 10-feet grey star in midair in front of him. The star's shape was undefined. Its surface was filled with potholes, appearing just like a meteorite. However, this seemingly normal appearance rippled and formed a frightening fluctuation that caused some distortions to appear in the surrounding sky. Everyone in the arena, including Pang Tong's group, had a solemn expression on their faces because of Jiang Hao's attack. Those direct disciples and the rest even had some shocked-filled eyes. They were aware that if it was them, there was likely nothing they could do to resist that attack. He is indeed worthy of being a senior direct disciple. Quite a number of disciples secretly sighed in their hearts. Jiang Hao did indeed possess extraordinary talent and he deserved to be one of the 4 senior direct disciples of the Desolate Hall. Great Star Majestic Fist was one of the 4 great martial arts of the Desolate Hall and only the 4 senior direct disciples in Desolate Hall have successfully mastered it. Senior Lin Dong is in quite a bad situation. At the same time, some disciples involuntarily looked towards Lin Dong, who had turned quiet. Although the latter's action puzzled them, in face of Jiang Hao's terrifying attack, they were simply unable to imagine that Lin Dong could contend against him. Perhaps, they may not doubt Lin Dong's potential. After all, though he only joined the Desolate Hall for less than a month, he was able to challenge one of the 4 senior direct disciples, Jiang Hao, and even forced the latter to use his signature move, Great Star Majestic Fist. Other than the 3 other senior direct disciples, it was likely that only Lin Dong possessed such capabilities. They are about to determine the victor in one move. Pang Tong's eyes were also looking at the arena as he muttered. Immediately, his eyes drifted towards Chen Zhen and Wu Dao, who were seated on the stone stair. After which, he was stunned. This was because he saw an extremely shocked expression on their faces. Pang Tong was shocked upon seeing this. His heart also suddenly began to throb wildly. Could it be? On the stone chair, Chen Zhen's voice was hoarse and he was even unable to finish his sentence. He stared in shock at that spot between Lin Dong's eyebrows while the expression on his face changed rapidly. It can't be that martial arts, back then even Senior Ju Tong did not successfully learn it. Senior Mo also turned blind while learning it. Wu Dao's voice was also somewhat dry. There was also a rich disbelief on top of this dryness. This disbelief had exceeded the intensity that he felt from Lin Dong, Pill River head immersion result. Chen Zhen turned quiet and he could only shake his head. If Lin Dong was truly able to gain an initial mastery over that martial art within a short 5 days, it could only mean that this fellow was simply too abnormal. This martial arts might be unusually powerful, but it also has its disadvantages. There is no telling if it is a good or bad thing if Lin Dong has really learnt it. Wu Dao also nodded when he heard Chen Zhen's words. There was a worried expression in his eyes as he stared at Lin Dong in the arena. Although that martial art was powerful, it was a vicious skill that severely wounded one's enemy and oneself as well. Junior Lin Dong, if you can receive this punch, I, Jian Hao, will no longer object your promotion to become a senior direct disciple. Jian Hao's body gradually rose into the air in the arena while being covered by a greyish glow. His eyes were sharp as he stared at Lin Dong in the distance and cried out sternly. A 10-feet grey-colored star quietly floated in front of him. Waves of extremely violent ripples swept apart like a storm. It was extremely powerful. However, Lin Dong still remained calm in the face of Jiang Hao's stern cry. The grey line between his eyebrows swiftly wiggled at this moment. It was as though there were numerous vague small grey lines spreading out while accompanied by a unique dark evil aura. The direction that they spread towards was actually Lin Dong's eyes. Buzz. However, just as those numerous tiny grey lines were about to invade Lin Dong's eyes, a gentle white glow suddenly appeared around his eyes. It actually directly absorbed those numerous grey lines. If it was possible to probe into the area between Lin Dong's eyebrows at this moment, one would see an ancient stone talisman quietly suspended there. A faint white glow was being emitted from it. Below the ancient stone talisman was a spot that was filled with a strange dark evil greyish chi. Hovering amidst this greyish chi was a grey-colored eyeball filled with a demonic scent. That eyeball was filled with an unusual and bloody trace, while an ancient ferociousness filled it. However, each time this viciousness surged forth, the ancient stone talisman above would send a rippling white glow that suppressed it until it could no longer move. Buzz. A thought suddenly spread over this place at this moment. After which, the stone talisman, which was suppressing the grey eyeball, finally withdrew its white glow. The moment the stone talisman stopped suppressing it, blood traces immediately began to emerge from the grey eyeball before its ferociousness completely erupted. Great Star Majestic Fist. A low and deep cry suddenly resounded over the sky. Jiang Hao adopted a serious expression as he clenched his fingers into a fist and threw a punch without any fancy moves. Bang! His fist struck violently against the grey star in front of him. After which, the star whizzed and flew out, creating a trace of greyish tail light. It was just like a meteorite searing across the sky as it flew towards Lin Dong with a hard and forceful violent ripple. Crack! The star whizzed forth. Before it could land on the ground, it had already left countless cracks on the ground. The spreading ripple was such that even several disciples at a great distance away could feel a piercing pain and chillness over their skin. This chillness caused the expressions of quite a number of disciples to change. The remnant wave was already this frightening. If they were located at the spot where Lin Dong was, wouldn't they be directly pummeled by that fierce and violent fist wind until turned into pulp? Why is Lin Dong still not reacting? Over at the direct disciples, Mo Ling and the rest had anxious expressions on their faces as they stared at Lin Dong, who had yet to act. Their bodies involuntarily turned tense. Bang! That grey star was extremely fast. Within a couple of breaths' time, it had already arrived above Lin Dong. Just when everyone halted their breaths, Lin Dong, who had yet to show any sign of activity, finally raised his head slowly. Both of his eyes opened. Kai? The instant that Lin Dong opened his eyes, the grey line between his eyebrows suddenly split open. After which, a grey light agglomerated. The spot between his eyebrows had actually transformed into a grey triangular eye. The instant the grey eye appeared, the space around Lin Dong suddenly became distorted. An extremely destructive shockwave wildly spread apart. Chen Zhen and Wu Dao on the stone chairs finally had a drastic change in expression the moment that grey eye appeared. They suddenly stood up and involuntarily cried out in a shocked manner, "Desolate Demon Eye?" Swoosh! When they stood up, an ordinary grey beam of light erupted from Lin Dong's grey eye. After which, it quietly flashed past the sky and collided with the grey star. Boom! There was no earth-shaking noise the moment the collision occurred. The grey light directly penetrated through the star in a simple and unhindered manner. After which, cracked lines covered the star. Finally, it directly burst apart in front of the shocked eyes of all the disciples. Jiang Hao's fierce punch had actually been broken so easily. Jiang Hao was similarly stunned when he saw this scene. Before he could even react, the pores around his body stood up. Through his shrunken eyes, he could see a grey light beam rushing towards him with a shocking speed. That was the light beam that had penetrated through his great star majestic fist earlier. It's so fast. There is no way to dodge it. The grey beam was so fast that Jiang Hao had no way to dodge it. Immediately, he clenched his teeth. Bright golden light surged before it directly transformed into an extremely thick golden light shield in front of him. Swoosh! The light beam arrived in the blink of an eye. After which, it slammed against the golden light shield in front of a countless number of gazes. However, soon after, a terrified expression surged onto Jiang Hao's face. This was because he discovered that his defense was of no use against that attack. A rich feeling of danger covered his heart. Seated in his stone chair, Chen Zhen's expression was solemn. His body shook before he strangely disappeared. It seems like he had to intervene in this fight. The radiant golden shield started to collapse at an astonishing speed due to that grey light beam. That defensive shield, which was able to resist an all-out attack from a 7-yuan Nirvana stage expert, collapsed just like paper make. At this moment, a panic-stricken expression quickly appeared on Jiang Hao's face. However, since he was able to become one of the 4 senior direct disciples of the Desolate Hall, he was no ordinary individual. In the face of danger, he acted in a decisive fashion. Immediately, he lightning-quick stomped on his crumbling golden shield, before he used that momentum to retreat. Whoosh! The moment Jiang Hao made his sudden explosive retreat, the grey light had already thoroughly smashed a hole through his golden shield. Furthermore, it continued on with an astonishing speed and flew straight towards Jiang Hao. Bang! 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 Jiang Hao's face turned solemn as he quickly retreated. As he continuously waved his sleeves, waves of powerful desolate energy came rushing forth. Following which, he tried to use those energy waves to resist the strange grey light beam that was headed towards him. However, it was obvious that his attempt at resistance was futile. Although the grey light beam was not frightening to look at, the corrosive strength that it contained was at quite a terrifying level. Therefore, those desolate energy shockwaves that were sent out by Jiang Hao did not hinder the grey light beam at all. At this moment, the entire stadium was thoroughly rifled up. Countless numbers of disciples, who were initially seated, all stood up suddenly. All of them wore dumbfounded looks as they stared at Jiang Hao, who was now extremely distressed. In that second, each and every one of them had a look of disbelief on their faces. The situation had turned around too quickly. Originally, they assumed that the fight would end the moment Jiang Hao executed his great star majestic fist. However, none of them expected that not only was Lin Dong able to handle such a fearsome attack, he even managed to force Jiang Hao into such a sorry state. An uproar spread throughout the entire mountain peak, and even Pang Tong, Fang Yun, and Song Ju gawked at this scene. The three of them shot a look at each other and they could all see the shock that was present in each other's eyes. Swish! At this very moment, Jiang Hao could not be bothered about the uproar that was happening on the mountain peak. His attention was completely focused on the grey light beam that was tailing him just like a maggot in his bone. A thick feeling of danger rose within him, causing all the hair on his body to involuntarily stand. It has caught up. Jiang Hao's pupils suddenly contracted. The grey light beam pierced through the void like lighting and had actually already arrived in front of him. I don't believe that I can't block you. After retreating in such a distressed manner, Jiang Hao's anger had finally shot through the roof. Straightening his head, boundless yuan power erupted crazily from his body, before he launched a palm attack. However, as Jiang Hao was about to completely unleash all the yuan power within his palm, an old figure strangely appeared in front of him. With a wave of his sleeve, a gentle draft appeared and swept Jiang Hao away. At the same time, he flipped his palm again before endless yuan power surged forth and formed a giant yuan power vortex in front of him. The vortex spun around crazily as the yuan power within it continued to grow endlessly. Kai? The grey light beam rushed into the yuan power vortex with lightning speed. After that happened, everyone could see several massive explosions erupting within the vortex. Chen Zhen's gaze turned solemn as he stared at the grey light beam that was rampaging across the vortex. At this moment, he raised both of his hands gently and directly patted the vortex, causing it to scatter. Following the scattering of the vortex, the grey light beam within also disappeared along with it. After Chen Zhen settled the grey light beam, Jiang Hao had already landed on the ground. He raised his head with a faint palpitation still remaining on his face. At this moment, the entire mountain peak was eerily silent. One gaze after another suddenly landed on the body of Chen Zhen, before all of them secretly gulped. Being disciples of the Desolate Gate, they were naturally aware that when disciples spared, the Hall Masters would not typically intervene. In fact, they would only interfere if there were incidents that were spinning out of control. Pang Tong and the other two looked at this scene with some palpitations in their hearts. Lin Dong, is that the Desolate Demon Eye? Asked Chen Zhen in a relaxed tone, while hovering in mid-air. He was looking at Lin Dong below, with a complex expression within his eyes. As this question appeared, a sucking sound resounded from everywhere within the stadium. In fact, for Pang Tong, Jiang Hao, and the other two, a rich astonishment expression appeared within their eyes. Amongst the Desolate Hall martial arts, the Great Desolation Mysterious Scripture was naturally the most powerful one. Below the Great Desolation Mysterious Scripture was the so-called Four Great Martial Arts. Amongst them, the Desolate Demon Eye was the hardest to master. Within these few years, although it cannot be said that no one had managed to master the Desolate Demon Eye, most of them were the Desolate Hall's older generation members. Amongst the disciples, however, there was no one who had successfully done it. However, right before their eyes, Lin Dong had actually managed to learn the Desolate Demon Eye, which was widely considered to be the most lethal martial art in Desolate Hall. How could this not make the audience feel shocked? Furthermore, they were clearly aware that Lin Dong had merely entered the martial arts hall for 5 days. However, in these 5 days, he actually managed to gain an initial mastery over the Desolate Demon Eye? Is this fellow even human? Thought Pang Tong and other three as they shot a look at each other. All of them had complex feelings. Even though they were all highly talented, if they were to be compared to that fellow Lin Dong, they seemed rather ordinary. Of course, the four of them naturally did not know that the reason why Lin Dong was able to do so was not only because of his talent but also because of the mysterious stone talisman. Although the Desolate Demon Eye was overbearing and evil and ordinary individuals would find it exceedingly difficult to fully control it, Lin Dong possessed the mysterious stone talisman. Therefore, he was able to fully restrain and control it. Every pair of eyes in the entire stadium congealed on Lin Dong's body. At this moment, the grey eye at Lin Dong's forehead began to close before turning into a grey line and disappearing. After the grey eye disappeared, a pale expression appeared on Lin Dong's face. The lethality, yuan power, and mental energy consumption of the Desolate Demon Eye had completely exceeded his expectations. If Chen Zhen did not intervene, the previous attack would have likely left serious injuries on Jiang Hao. This situation was something that he obviously did not want to see. After all, this is the Desolate Hall and not the ancient battlefield. Therefore, he could no longer be as aggressive as before. Yes, Hall Master, the martial art that I have just used is indeed the Desolate Demon Eye. Lin Dong bowed at Chen Zhen, before saying in a bitter voice, due to the fact that I only have an initial mastery over it, I can't control it well. I see, Chen Zhen subconsciously muttered before turning silent for a while. It was as if he was trying to quell the shock within his heart. After seeing Chen Zhen fall silent, Lin Dong did not speak anymore. He knew that Chen Zhen and the rest must be shocked that he was able to learn the Desolate Demon Eye. On the stone chair, Wu Dao secretly laughed bitterly in his heart. However, joy promptly surged into his heart. The more talented Lin Dong was, the better it was for their Desolate Hall. After all, it has been many years since their Desolate Hall had produced such an outstanding disciple. The path that the Desolate Demon Eye walks on is the pursuit of greater killing power. In the future, if you are unable to completely control it, try to refrain from using it when sparring with other disciples. Besides, this martial art will have a corrosive effect on the person using it. Unless it is a critical juncture, it's best not to use it recklessly, said Chen Zhen in a serious tone after regaining his clarity. Yes, disciple understands. Lin Dong respectfully nodded his head. He did not expose the existence of the mysterious stone talisman. In fact, he did not have to worry about the corrosive effect of the Desolate Demon Eye because of it. Nonetheless, the mysterious stone talisman was his greatest secret. As such, due to his cautious disposition, he was naturally unwilling to expose its existence even though he knew Chen Zhen and the rest did not have any malicious intentions towards him. For today's spar, the victor and loser have been decided. From today onwards, you will be the 5th senior direct disciple of the Desolate Hall. Is there anyone else who objects? Chen Zhen turned towards Pang Tong and the rest and asked. After hearing his words, Pang Tang and the other 3 hesitated for a while before shaking their heads. This time around, even Jiang Hao could only laugh bitterly. The power that Lin Dong had displayed left him with no grounds to object. Roar? After Pang Tong and the other 3 indicated that they did not object, the entire stadium immediately erupted into a spectacular sea of cheering sounds and voices. Over tens of thousands of Desolate Hall disciples stared fervently at the thin figure standing in the middle of the stadium. A trace of respect appeared on all of their faces. After today's match, Lin Dong had thoroughly conquered all the disciples in Desolate Hall. From today onwards, he would also become the fastest disciple in the history of the Desolate Hall to become a senior direct disciple. This video will end here.